Hello again. I'm Braddock Supervisor John Cook. Welcome back to Braddock Neighborhood News, the program I am using to provide you with information on issues facing our community and ideas on how we can strengthen our neighborhoods. Fairfax County is home to a leading sheriff's office and the largest in Virginia, serving over 1 million residents. In addition to managing the adult detention center, providing security in the courthouse, and serving civil process, the Sheriff's Office is a visible sign of public safety and protection to our citizens. We are fortunate to have with us today the head of this agency, Stacy Kincaid, who has served for over 28 years and was recently elected to her second term as sheriff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Sheriff Kincaid, Sheriff's Office, people sometimes think of sort of the 1890s Wild West as far as what the sheriff does. In Virginia, the Sheriff's Office has some very discrete functions, and tell us a little bit about what your office does.
Well, you mentioned in Virginia the separate functions, and not every sheriff's office is a full-service sheriff's office. For example, Loudoun County and some other jurisdictions throughout the Commonwealth. But in my office, we are responsible for, as you previously mentioned, managing the Adult Detention Center, providing security for the courthouse, and serving civil law process. And while we attend the same public safety criminal justice academy as the police department, we attend for an additional 4 weeks, which certifies us for those particular functions. So in addition to being certified as law enforcement, we also have the certification as for jail operations, court security, and civil enforcement. And
jail security, it's a big deal. It's hard work. I'd venture to say the hardest work that your office does. And talk a little bit about the challenges for that. I don't know if the average person out there thinks too much about what it takes to run a jail, but it takes a lot.
It certainly does. Now we have approximately 1,160 inmates as of today, and we have I have the majority of my staff that works in the Adult Detention Center. Out of 609, 510 are sworn deputy sheriffs, and then the rest are support and admin staff. But we provide everything from medical services to meals to room and board to programs, educational programs, religious programs. We try to prepare them for release, so when they get out of jail, they have more of an opportunity to be successful when they go back into the society in their neighborhoods. But we run a very firm but fair facility, and we also have 24/7 medical attention. We've got mental health counselors in our facility, and it's a 24/7 operation.
And the jail is both for people awaiting trial and then some after sentencing. Talk a little bit about that population.
Right. So we have people that, as you mentioned, are waiting for sentencing, and then of course those that are have already been sentenced. So that population ranges anywhere from minimum all the way up to maximum security. And with our population, there's always challenges, not only with those that have some type of mental illness, but also with those that have substance use challenges as well as intellectual disabilities. So it's something that we expect to be able to provide the best possible services to our inmate population.
You've mentioned mental health, something that you and I are working a lot on. Very difficult challenge when you have someone in a jail facility which is not designed for treatment, and when you have someone there who is not in a condition that they're going to be able to respond as well to management as somebody else would do. So what are the sort of the special challenges in a jail for somebody with mental illness?
So as you mentioned, the challenges, and when someone's brought into jail, we have staff that evaluates because sometimes it may look to be behavioral issues as opposed to the real underlying cause, which could be some type of mental illness. So the inmates are assessed, they're evaluated by several different processes from the time they're booked in to the medical section, and then of course to the community services board, and then the medical doctor, psychiatrist, and all the way up through the, that particular area. Once that's established, right now the goal is when someone comes in that is in a mental health crisis, the goal is to get them stabilized. we're not there to provide treatment. And again, it's not against the law to be mentally ill, and jail is certainly not a place where people belong that do need treatment. So it's certainly one that we've been working on together, and this leads kind of to diversion first, which I'm sure you're going to mention.
Right, and we'll get to that. Just before we do that, I think the point's well taken, though, that someone doesn't show up in the jail and say, "Sheriff, I just want to let you know, I'm mentally ill and I have these challenges, and here's what I need to help me get through the day." Right. You have to figure that out on the fly, and your deputies have to be trained to be able to understand or recognize the difference between someone who has a mental health illness challenge versus somebody who doesn't, and they're maybe a troublemaker and they're trying to set you up. It's not, there are bad people in jail.
There are.
And you have to be ready to deal with them too. So how do you do that? How do you tell the difference? And what do you do in that first 48 hours with someone when you don't know who they are?
And you're right, we get people at their very worst, whether it's a mental health issue or a medical issue. People are at their worst, and not everybody that comes to jail has a support system or a family that's able to provide that information for us. And unless the police officer that brings a person in has that information, then we don't know. But what we do have is we have staff, deputy sheriffs that are trained, and specifically in the crisis intervention team training, that's the one that's mandated by the state. And we also have a section within the jail where we have our classification team. And our classification team is made up of deputy sheriffs who do all of the interviews, who meet also with our confinement staff, with our medical staff, and with our forensic or mental health staff, and they decide where an individual is going to be housed. So there is a process in place. It's not as though just someone comes in and right off the bat we were going to put them in, more institutionalized housing location. There's a lot of factors that are considered, and that is whether or not their first time, whether or not they have been, in treatment before, their education level, certainly how institutionalized they are.
And before we go to the version first, let's just, because I want to remind folks that we've got a lot of people in the jail who don't have a mental health challenge, some of whom are tremendously bad actors. We've had terrorists in this county, we've had murderers, whether awaiting trial after sentencing. What precautions and what processes do you have to use when you're handling somebody who is very dangerous?
So we have, again, in our housing areas, there's some, especially in the maximum security area, there's additional security measures that are taken. And certainly if somebody is considered to be that level of, that much of a threat, then they're escorted by 2 deputy sheriffs. So, but they are housed accordingly, and we prepare and we make sure that we put every security measure in place to make sure that they are safe and secure while they're in our facility. But again, the safety and security of the staff is also paramount.
Right. And so when we're talking diversion first, something we're working on, part of that very broad program is that we know that there are some people, certainly not all, but there's a subset of people who have been, they're either arrested or they could be arrested. Something's happened out there in the public, but we can determine on the street that what's really happening is not so much criminal intent, but mental illness.
Sure. And
so now we can provide a treatment path instead of an incarceration path. And you've been a great supporter of that program, and tell people a little bit about it.
So last summer, I took a diverse group down to San Antonio, Bexar County, Texas, and members from the Community Services Board, Police Department, my staff, and a volunteer. So we went down to Bexar County and we learned about their nationally recognized system that's in place, which, again, they're the national model. We learned best practices and we brought those back. And their system, it took several years, as they refer to their 12 to 13-year overnight success. And now we're incorporating some of the things that we learned down there. So right now we have the assessment center at Merrifield, and the focus of Diversion First is to divert those individuals, as you mentioned, that are out on the street that, whether they're trespassing or just nuisance crimes, but very, nonviolent, very low risk, that instead of bringing them to jail, then there's an opportunity to bring them to Merrifield to get assessed and then send them into treatment as opposed to jail.
And Merrifield is the Community Services Board Center in the Merrifield area, which both is available for people to walk in or come in for appointments if they have a range of disabilities, mental health challenges, but also special entrance and a whole sort of suite now that we have for folks who the police may bring in. And one area where your staff is a great partner in this effort is when the police do bring someone to Merrifield instead of the jail, there are deputies there to help retain custody of folks, let the police get back out on the street and do their job.
That's correct. So we have, as you mentioned, I've assigned staff to Merrifield, and all of our staff that's assigned, they're all certified in crisis intervention team training. And so they work there to provide security, but also accept the transfer of custody. And then, of course, we do all of the transports outside of the Northern Virginia area, which is it's pretty nice to have, because that way the police officers are able to get back onto the street, as well as even the smaller jurisdictions, such as the Herndon and the Town of Vienna police departments and the city of Fairfax. So we've done quite a bit in terms of being partners, and that's what it's about, because Diversion First is not just going to be, a couple people doing something. It's going to take quite a few people, ranging from, as well as, the police officers to judges to magistrates to the sheriff's office to community services board. So we're part of that group, that community, and this is what we're very proud of.
And as we continue to implement Diversion First, we've started with folks who the police encounter on the street. They make a determination through extra training that we provide to the police of, okay, here's somebody, we'll take them to Merrifield instead of the jail. But as we continue to get into implementation, there are other places in the criminal justice system where we may want to divert folks out, and it may be in the jail. Somebody, please bring someone to the jail, and you make the determination, this is somebody who ought to be in treatment. It may be at arraignment with a magistrate. It might be at trial with a judge. It might be at sentencing. But there are a lot of places in the process. And so that means everyone in that process has to, in addition to the job they're used to doing, become sort of a mini counselor, psychologist, and everything else to help make this work.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
And that's not easy.
It's not, but it's something that is important to people, and I think with the awareness, and it shouldn't take a tragedy for us to do what's right, but the systemic problem of how we treat those that are mentally ill, it's a problem nationwide, but this is something that moving forward, we will be the change factor. We will be, we expect to have the model, as you well know. Right,
and that is our goal, and because we know nationally, 30–40% of people, maybe more, who are currently in jails have a significant mental health challenge. And I think those statistics are borne out in the Fairfax jail as well.
40% of my inmate population with mental illness, as well as co-occurring substance use disorder. And as you mentioned about different areas with the opportunity to divert folks, not everyone's going to be eligible for diversion. So when they do come to the jail, and eventually when we have the jail diversion process, procedure, program in place, that's also going to help. And again, that's going to require a mental health docket, which I know we're working on now as well.
Right. And it's important, you made the point about sort of the nonviolent folks, and just so that everybody out there who's watching is clear, we're not talking about the insanity defense. We're not talking about somebody who kills somebody and is claiming mental incapacity as their defense. That process does not change. But we're very fortunate in Fairfax County. We have so few murders, so few very violent crimes. But we have a large number of people arrested for, as you were saying before, everything from drunken public urination to trespass to, and sometimes just scuffles between citizens.
Right.
Or maybe even not a crime, maybe even the police responding to a domestic occurrence or a dispute that fortunately has not yet reached the point of a crime occurring, and we're trying to stop it from occurring, stop people from becoming violent with each other. And likewise, in the jail, sometimes jail inmates become violent with each other.
They do.
And you know, talk about kind of how you can help that process. I mean, if you can discover or find that someone's, you know, having a mental health issue that's leading to potential violence in the jail, how this can help them.
So we have deputy sheriffs that are assigned to security posts throughout the facility, and again, they know the inmates that are in the housing area. So the inmates are classified, so if they are experiencing some type of mental health illness, they are housed in a mental health unit, which again, when I first was elected, I relocated the female inmates that were experiencing mental illness into a new location, which was much more therapeutic. It was closer to the mental health staff. There was natural lighting. The cells were much larger. So our staff, they're trained, they get educated, and they have the opportunity to learn in terms of different types of housing areas. So whether it's somebody that's just a disciplinary management problem versus somebody that, as we've discussed, has some type of mental health issue. And for inmates that get in fights in the jail, if they're gangs or something like that, this is all the information that's collected through the classification process, where we're able to determine that. So of course, it's a lot of intelligence. We have our own sheriff's intelligence unit, and that's extremely helpful when it comes to housing these folks.
Right. That's good. So let's talk about some of the other areas, because we could probably spend the whole show, we could spend the whole show and more talking about diversion first, and someday maybe we'll do that.
Right.
But your office does a whole lot more than that. Courthouse security, kind of a big deal. I'm a lawyer. I go into the courthouse.
Right.
Judges are there. A lot of people come through that courthouse every day. And we know from things we've seen happen around the country that if you don't have good courthouse security, you can have bad things happen. And so talk about that.
So we have approximately 4,000 visitors that come through our courthouse every single day. We have 32 sitting judges. We have more courtrooms than judges. And we have a courthouse facility staff, which is a little different from the court security officers that are in each courtroom with a judge. And we do our best to prepare and to train with staff, with our stakeholders, for those reasons, because we know that there are bad things that happen, and we have a lot of advanced training with the staff, and we take great pride in our ability to try to keep people safe while they come to visit. So. And
we do. We have a very efficient courthouse, very effective courthouse. Both the operation, certainly of security, the operation of the clerk's office, the way the judges handle their dockets, and that's a source of pride, I think, for the county.
Absolutely.
And the other major aspect of what your office does, serving civil process, which a lot of people I don't think about, but legal cases start with somebody filing a paper with the court, and that has to be served on the other party, and it might be a civil lawsuit, could be a divorce, it could be something else, and there's a lot of that paperwork that your office handles.
And there could be protective orders, which we've seen an increase in,
Right.
and we work closely with the Office for Women and Sexual and Domestic Violence Services.
Right, and we're going to work on that name.
We're going to work on that.
It's too long, but you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because in our work on domestic violence, where we work together as well, it's really important that when we encourage a victim to go down and get that protective order, all we have at that point is a judge's signature on a piece of paper until your office gets that paper served. And talk about that.
Well, so once our office receives the paperwork, we go out to attempt service, and then once the individual has been served, we immediately contact the petitioner immediately. And that certainly has cut down on quite a bit of time. That's something that we started doing, I believe, about a year and a half ago. So we continue to keep that individual, the petitioner, informed to make sure that, again, they know that the person's been served, they know that it's a stay away, that they shouldn't have any contact with the perpetrator. In addition to that service that we provide, we also have counselors from the domestic violence come into our jail and provide education to our inmates, because often they're not only victims but they're perpetrators as well. So they've also been very helpful with that. But with our civil process, as I mentioned, the numbers have gone up, and we are very on top of that.
And that's, you know, it's a bad thing that there's a need for that, but the good news with those numbers going up, it's not that there's more domestic violence. Actually, what it means is more victims are reaching out and letting us help them, letting the government help, and ending that violence, which is something that's really important for our families, as well as you know, the county as a whole. So that's a lot of hard stuff. Let's talk about some of the good stuff. You're very involved in community outreach, Shop with the Sheriff, Project Lifesaver. Tell us about some of those things that you and your office does for the community.
Well, we've made our community outreach initiatives a priority because many people don't know what the Sheriff's Office does, and this is a way to reach out to the community, and aside from our core responsibilities, let us tell you about what we do and what we provide to the community. So we've got great programs, as you mentioned, our Shop with the Sheriff program, which is a program that I believe you've been involved with for the past, I don't know.
Every year.
Every year. That's a program that we're very proud of, and we're able to raise money. So when these children that live in emergency shelters are ready to go back to school, we take them shopping for items that they may need, school supplies, clothing, and it certainly does give them a sense of, you know, what a great feeling to be able to go back to school, the sense of dignity, the sense of having things that other kids have. So that's a program that we've got some great partners with Target, with Paisanos, with Verizon, with just a ton of corporate sponsors. And also the community. The community's been, I mean, when we go there and we see folks shopping, they're asking what this is about. We tell them, and they, you know, don't hesitate to take out a $10 bill, $20 bill and say, hey, I'd like to donate this to the program. So that's a great program. And our Project Lifesaver program, which many people don't know about, and that's where we have clients that tend to wander. They're either on the autism spectrum disorder, or they may have dementia or Alzheimer's, and they tend to wander. So we equip them with a GPS tracking device, and should they go and wander, the caregiver will call us, and we will respond, and we will locate their loved one. So I always do that when I say that, because we have a 100% success rate, and we are fortunate with our partnerships, and even with the police department, who provides. Should we need the helicopter to come and help us search, they've been a part of our program.
And that's a great help. You know, we have our whole county philosophy. We're trying to allow people to age in place, which means, you know, we recognize, and research tells us, that many people want to stay in their homes when they become older. Those that want to move, that's great, but some who want to stay in their homes are often healthier mentally when they can stay in their homes. But we also know that you can have challenges, and when somebody it's the fear of every sandwich generation person, right? Nobody wants their parent to wander off and not be found. So that's a great program that helps seniors, helps the kids of seniors who are, you know, care about their parents. And I wanted to go back to Shop with the Sheriff for a minute, because what that program also does is it introduces at-risk kids to law enforcement in a positive way. And that's so important, that the kids' view of law enforcement be a good one and not a negative one, because we know what happens when the view is negative. The kids grow up, and often bad things can happen. So that interaction is really important.
And we, you know, we take the opportunity to become role models, not only with that program, but also going into the schools, and the opportunities that we have, we take full advantage.
We've got about a minute left, and I know there are ways that people can volunteer and help out in the office, and tell us a little bit about that.
So we have over 300 volunteers. The volunteers they may come through OAR, they may come through faith-based organizations, Alcoholics Anonymous, and we also have a Reserve Deputy Sheriff program that will be launched in the fall, and that's another way to sign up and to come be a part of our team, and all the information is located on our website.
Great. So great things are happening. We're out of time, but thank you so much for being on the show. Sheriff Kincaid and her office provide a vitally important service in maintaining the safety and protection for the residents of Fairfax County, and we're lucky to have her at the helm. For more information, visit the Sheriff's website or send an email to sheriff@fairfaxcounty.gov. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Braddock Neighborhood News. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or other needs, please contact my office at 703-425-9300 or email braddock@fairfaxcounty.gov. Tune in next month for another edition, and please remember to look for ways to volunteer. Your community needs you.